This episode is brought to you by ESPN. Catch the first WWE Premium Live event on ESPN, WrestlePalooza, live on Saturday, September 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be an epic night in Indianapolis, featuring some of the biggest WWE superstars. This event is only on ESPN, so go to stream.espn.com and sign up to the ESPN app today for your all-access pass to WrestlePalooza and all WWE Premium Live events.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins, just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag, the one you stole from your ex, or your overpriced half a studio apartment, or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar, triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a Vitamin Water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Hello and welcome to episode 262 of the Washed Up Emo podcast. I am Tom Mullen from washedupemo.com. Today on the podcast, we're doing something really, really fun. We are interviewing 5 members of Minus the Bear related around Menos el Oso 20th anniversary. There is a tour, there is a reissue on Suicide Squeeze, and I thought, let's talk to everybody, talk about the record, and very, very fun. We're going to have each person describe the other people in one word. So you're going to hear everyone's responses about everybody else as you listen to all of the episodes. Now, there are 5 episodes, and you need to listen to all of them, all right? I didn't put them all in one because I thought that's a lot. So you're going to get them in bite-sized 45-minute chunks, and I hope you enjoy. All right, first up is Matt Bayles, all right? Matt. He's does electronics on the album, producer, also engineer, and he was replaced a little bit after this record, but his main point is he was around during this record, did a lot, and the guys thought it'd be great to have Matt on. You might know him from also producing some other records, and so dive into Matt's world after you're done listening. So here we go. This is 1 of 5. This is Matt Bayles, episode 262 of the Washed Up Emo podcast, talking about Menos el Oso 20th anniversary.
My name is Matt Bayles. It is July 19th, 2025, and I'm in my mixing studio in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, fantastic. West Coast, hello.
Yep.
So how do you pronounce, I do Menos el Oso. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how I would pronounce it.
Okay, good. My wife, who is Chilean, would probably scowl at me as I said that. So I'm glad she's not here.
Is it would she say Mino?
I don't know. Maybe she would just give me a side eye and say you're just a gringo saying it.
Well, exactly. I'm an 8th Puerto Rican, but I'm a gringo ultimately.
So thinking back to that record, any first memories? Because you had many hats. You had a lot on this record. A lot.
Yeah.
Making the record, producing, and engineering. I just was like, how the hell did you balance all that? That was my first thought.
Yeah. Well, the good thing. So, speaking specifically, not so much to my first recollection of the record, but to sort of the amount of hats I wore. I was not. In order for us to spend the amount of time we wanted to making the record, we kind of siloed off a little bit after drums. So and this is one of the things I was trying to remember. Basically, we went into litho. I did drums. I'm sure we got most of Dave's core guitar done during that session. I'm sort of drawing a blank on Corey's bass part. So I would imagine we probably did that then, but it's possible some of that got redone later. But so then what happened was Jake is also a capable recording engineer. Doesn't do it professionally, but when I first met him, in 1995, when I first moved here, he was also recording as well, but it was more of a hobby for him. So he did a lot of his vocal recording on his own, and I would QC it here and there, and but we spent a couple months doing the overdubs because we didn't want to feel like we were in the studio having to make immediate decisions or abrupt decisions or whatever it may be. I just remember really feeling good about the songs going in, even though there were some songs that, Jake, a lot of times vocals came in kind of last, and we can kind of talk about that. Well, there's one specific, the biggest song from the record was sung during mixing, like the one that I think most people would characterize as the biggest song from that record.
Wow.
The vocals were done during mixing, and because we were all banging our heads on the wall about it. But yeah, so I just remember thinking we had sort of kind of gone further into a sort of glitchier, no, I don't know. We just gone into a place that we kind of had two different tacks. We had the sort of glitchy, sort of our hip hop inflected songs like "The Game Needed Me," and then we had sort of these longer opusy things. And the hip hop sort of flavors implied or sort of steered me towards how I recorded the drums, which then kind of set the tone for the whole record. Which I think, when I think about that. Think about the record, I always go back to sort of the decision about the drums and how we captured them, and very out of context recording approach given the time where everything was Albini inflected in an ambient sense. Everything was
done at the same time.
But everything was big and bombastic and roomy.
Oh,
you know
right,
what I mean?
Right.
Primarily is kind of where my, when I say that, that's kind of what I'm sort of referring to. And we made a conscious choice, and I brought it up, and everybody was on board to not do that, to make it drier, to make it not small, but not ambient and bombastic in the drum department. And you sort of, from there, that implied a lot of other guitar decisions, tones, amount of ambience, amount of non-ambience. And so that was, to me, that when I think about the record, I just think we committed to stepping outside of what I felt like was the easy way to approach it, which has been like, okay, let's just make another version of what we had done prior, and what a lot of people were doing was just kind of like big and bombastic ambient stuff. A lot of the bands I worked with, they're like, yeah, we want it to be like, sound like this. I was like, okay. And I think this one, for me, having, my job was recording, and I just really didn't want to repeat what everybody else was asking me to do.
So that time
when they were
period,
hiring me to record.
So that time period, did you feel a pressure to do this? Because again, you get into a groove and whatever that time period is, but to do something like that differently, what was the conversation like with the band? Was there any pushback from
I don't recall
the label?
There being much pushback. I think there's a lot of, at the time, I would say that a lot of the guys were listening to dance music. Junior, senior. Even the beginning of My Severe, like if you were to go see us play before a show, we'd have music, a set music, and it was almost always hip hop and Phoenix or, any of those kinds of things. So we weren't really, even though we all knew our peers, we weren't really fixated on listening to that stuff. And it wasn't what drove us internally as a band in terms of sonic inspiration and stuff. So it was a lot of Justin Timberlake. We listened to a lot of just R&B and rap stuff, and I think you don't really get those types of sounds from that genre. So when I was like, hey guys, let's not do what, we weren't necessarily trying to contradict things, specifically, but for me, I was like, look, I really just don't want to do this. Are you guys okay with sort of taking a different sonic approach to the drums? And that's going to beget sort of the follow-on decisions. And I don't recall there being much resistance. I had a lot of good faith with them, goodwill with them, just from virtue of recording all their other bands.
Right.
And so, yeah, I didn't get a lot of pushback. And I think my recollection was that it was a pretty non-controversial conversation.
And then going through that, like, let's say you got the drums done, you got David's stuff done. What was there like a breakthrough moment when everyone sort of was like, was it the first song you kind of played back and mixed, or when was that moment where it was like, I hear this now? Because when you hear, like you said, that's Albini sound for so long and you're trying to do something else, was there the aha moment?
For me, one of the moments where I first kind of, I remember like programming like the electronic drum beat in the game needed me, and just kind of liking Dave's like dum bum bum like looping routine that he did in that song. And prior to hearing any singing, I think we were all pretty like gung ho on that song, and that was even before we recorded it. I think that song, once I heard vocals, and I'm trying to remember sort of, the Menos el Oso demos just came out, and I don't think The Game Needed Me was on that, because The Game Needed Me was a little later in our writing process, if I recall, and maybe the vocals weren't done until till Jake had time to do it at home after we had done drums. But when he sent vocals, and there was kind of this stacked harmony thing that he did, the O, and then it's just the whole thing. That song, when he sang on it, I kind of was like, okay. And then Drilling was another one. Drilling is one of my favorite songs ever from us. And I kind of wrote some really dissonant, abstract stuff that almost, those two songs were the ones that really, I really loved how they turned out. And that's really not to say the others, that I didn't like a lot of the others too, but those are the two I remember. When Jake sang The Game Needed Me, I think he just, I was like, oh, well, that stacked harmony thing you're doing, like, I need to sample that so I can put it on my keyboard and play that live. And that's what I ended up doing, which we normally, and it wasn't a backing track. It was just in my computer, I had created a sample, and it was just sitting there on one key on that song amidst the drum machine parts and everything else. And that was kind of also a part where I was like, okay, well, now I need to broaden my sort of, again, we didn't get into backing tracks, but just sort of trying to find a way to take some of these moments that I thought were catchy from the record and use my technology to implement it so it sounded a little more like the record on stage without getting into like canned stuff.
That's what I remember. I'm sure you did in Connecticut too, of like, the movie intro, right? The movie quote intro, either on the album or at the show, and it was like you could hear the tape deck being, start and stopped.
Oh.
What about during recording going, how the fuck are we going to do this live?
Well, again, so
was that not the case for you?
Not for me. I dealt, again, it's something I still deal with to this day, is there's a constant debate especially when you're dealing with kind of indie artists who don't necessarily ascribe, especially back then, it's like, well, I can't play that live, so I don't want to put it on the record. It's like, well, let's just make a good record and then we'll figure out the live stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, I don't know that we necessarily, Dave had already nailed all the sampling shtick. Like, there was no challenge, all the sort of different, he had 3 DL6s on his board or whatever, and he would have at least 2 of them running samples all the time. And so he really had that dialed. And, I never, especially, Alex, my replacement, can sing, and I can kind of sing, but I have a terrible voice, but I can sing. But I never had a monitor back then because we were such a small sort of developing band. So I was never comfortable trying to play and sing to pull off maybe some of the harmonies Jake was writing. So the solution, for example, on The Game Needed Me was just to get that little sort of catchy hip hoppy sounding stack and make sure that showed up in the chorus the way we anticipated. But beyond that, I think, Dave pulled off most of his stuff. Pulling off the drum machine stuff and all my different sound changes were easy. I'd learned how to do it by that point. So it wasn't, but I don't, we never really worried about whether or not we were going to pull something off, because I would figure it out. I was usually the guy who had to kind of be like, all right, well, what's the solution to this?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody else had their own instrument and Jake had to sing. So I was like, fine, plus 2 points from beer commercials. It's basically just a running kick drum the whole time. And so I not program, but we would run a running kick drum as the, 4 on the floor Daft Punk dance beat that would come out my rig for the whole song.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it was for click, but part of it was just to give that pulse in the PA. And so, they got a lot more capable and ornate and making sure that, the records got a little more involved later. And I think, Alex started incorporating some more tech to pull off some of the extra things, but also Alex can sing. And so they were able to fill in the harmonies in a way that I wasn't comfortable doing because I was never that confident in my singing, even if I sort of can.
Was there any like specific, stuff that you did with electronics that was either challenging or rewarding that you kind of were able to integrate into a track?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to, this is song titles. The Fix. I mean, there's like, I had a chaos pad and most of my stuff ran through a chaos pad. And there's on The Fix, like Dave and I and Jake all would capture a sample at the beginning of the song. And there's like a whole breakdown at the end on The Fix where it's, Dave and Jake and I all trade samples of the same note progression.
Mm-hmm.
But like on the chaos pad, I can flip it backwards and I can do, and I'm running a bunch of effects pedals and all this stuff. And Dave and Jake are also doing it. So there was, that was something that I think they initially wrote. I'm trying to remember how that actually came about. It's funny. I was trying to remember some of these stories from back then, and I'm a little foggy on how the sample break in The Fix came about. But it was probably something Dave had an idea, and then the idea was like, well, why don't Dave and Jake ping samples at each other? And I was like, well, I can sample too. Let's all ping, like sample live, like as opposed to just having it being pre-recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was a moment where like, the chaos pad and the sampling capabilities of it, as soon as I switched off the preset, it would disappear. But that was one of those, I had a laptop and I had the Nord, and I just switched between sounds from the laptop and sounds from the Nord. And then the drum machine was a separate thing, and everything was going through the chaos pad. And so, performing through the chaos pad was fun for me because I had general shticks that I would do, but there was a little bit of interactivity to it that I enjoyed, and just made it. For me, I always want to be consistent with what I'm trying to do, but I like a little bit of happy accidents to occur.
Absolutely.
Certainly when you're performing live. And I think I was, sometimes I'd get screwed by that when gear wouldn't work properly, but drum machines not starting the drum loop at the beginning and the drum loop stopping halfway through the break that it's not supposed to stop in. That happened a couple times, and that was never fun. The side eyes I would get when that occurred were never exciting. But yeah, I think, for me, I'm first and foremost, my role in the band as a musician, I viewed my role as trying to be the glue. Certainly early on, because Dave was playing so many parts and was kind of, the tapping and everything. So a lot of times I was trying to sort of, and Jake would play these things that would interweave with Dave really beautifully. And I just had to find a zone where I was amplifying what the melodic structure was in case it wasn't coming across in the freneticness of Dave's guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so as time wore on, in that record, I sort of was a little less keyboard pad oriented, and got a little more into sort of two-handed Rhodes playing, where again, I'm not like a gifted musician, but I have a good ear and I can hack it out. And so that was where I started actually playing more two-handed on Oso for things instead of playing one hand with the chaos pad. So it was that was the evolution of my musicianship, I guess. And trying to play a little more like left hand, right hand, instead of just mimicking melodies or finding a pad and then putting a crazy chaos pad preset on it.
Right. What I just find interesting is that, like you said, you've worked with these guys on their records. You're in the band. You're also producing. You're engineering. I know a lot of people wore different hats, but how, like, being able to manage that and take control. But I know you're part of the band, but you have these roles, and as it seems very like you guys were working together on this, but it just seems like it's like different parts of your brain you really had to compartmentalize. That's what I feel.
I think, well, and I mean, again, going back to what I said a second ago about necessarily not necessarily being the most, not in my mind being the best musician, certainly not in the band, but just like I have a skill, but I'm not going to sit down and shred a Bach concerto on piano. Like I'm fitting into a certain spot. But so if anything, like me steering them is easy. I've been doing product, at that point, I'd been, in Seattle recording for 6-7 years, and obviously now it's almost 30. But for me, helping steer other people is kind of what I'm good at. And what was hard for me with some of these songs was trying to find out where I fit in. As a musician, so I would sit in my apartment because I did most of my keyboards by myself, and I would send them to them and they would send me thoughts. But I remember really struggling with, and I couldn't tell you which songs off the top of my head anymore, but I remember the hardest part for me was the self-critique of my parts and whether or not they were just ass or not. And I mean, a lot of ways that sort of plays into that with the way I think I mix them too, because sometimes even if I like my part, I'm going to hedge on keeping myself a little bit less loud than on top of people. And I think sometimes that was the right call. Sometimes maybe it wasn't, but that's just the hindsight of, or the perspective that comes from looking back on it. But I think if anything, me steering any of those guys, easy. Me steering myself and doing it in a vacuum where like I didn't have somebody in the room with me vibing on my parts in that moment. I mean, that was probably the hardest part for me as a musician rather than the engineering side, because the engineering production side, I'm quick with opinions and pretty confident in them when I express them.
Right.
So
it's so funny. I wrote you trying to mix this, right? And then I was like, he's probably going to say he's going to turn his shit down, and you did. So has that changed? Have you been able to grow out of that?
You mean in terms of just my own, like look at my own contributions on it as a musician? You mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think when they were talking about remastering a little while ago, they wanted me to like find the demo files and find some different stuff, and I was like, okay, I'll find it. And as I was listening to the mixes, I mean, honestly, I just was like, oh my god, I could do so much better now. This is ridiculous. And that applies to any number of facets of the mix, not just my contribution. But if you had 2 weeks after we finished mixing it, if I got back and listened to mixes, I probably would have felt the same way, that I could make improvements. And so that's that just comes with the territory, and everybody else is like, no man, this is just the moment we made then. Let's just remaster it and not reimagine it, so where the people who love the record start to think it's a different record.
Right.
Because we've seen remixes happen. I've seen remixes happen by records I love, that the remixes just don't do anything for me. And so even if I was sort of asking for it, I understood and respected and to some extent agreed with why they were like, no, we're not going to do that. This is the moment we made back then, and let's not sort of not litigate it, but relitigate is the word that keeps popping into my head, but let's not reimagine it or revisit it. Let's just let it be what it was, instead of trying to constantly improve things just for the sake of some 20-year-old perspective, I guess.
Right. Or another marketing point,
or the marketing point. Like, and that's the thing. When I pitched, I was the one who pitched it, and it wasn't a marketing point for me. It was like, I can make this sound better.
Yep.
And they shut it down, and I think it was the right call, and that's not whitewash. I mean, like, I get the philosophy of not, letting sleeping dogs lie.
Yes.
I guess, for lack of a better word.
Well, my dog is next to me. Good. I will not touch her.
But yeah, I mean, so I think there's some stuff that I would probably do differently on a lot of levels. I mean, it's whether it's related to me or not, I think, but that again is when you do my job, that's just the way it goes. If you're not improving, if you don't think you've gotten better at your job, and then this is 20 years on, if I don't think I could do a better job 20 years on, then I probably should have quit my job.
Absolutely. You were there, and I do think having that collective decision around what you were going to do and asking and not just doing, like, it seems there's great communication. Well,
and I'm speaking strictly about mixing. But the recording, like, I think we were all, for the most part, pulling in the same direction. And I don't think we had arguments during mixing. I just think I could do a better job now, and that's just my own road to hoe.
Tell me about that. What happened during mixing for the vocals?
Oh, well, Pachuca hadn't been sung.
Wow.
Jake just was beating his head against the wall. I think even as a collective, we were like, we wrote a ska song. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, I mean, I thought we liked a bunch of the components of it, but musically it was like, okay, cool. But it's like it becomes this whole upbeat thing where it's basically a freaking ska song. And look, I love Operation Ivy as much as the next guy, but that's not necessarily where we were. Like, it kind of happened that way, and we didn't second guess it. And we just let it, we didn't doubt the song, but we didn't know what it was until Jake sang on it. And that was, I think Chris Common, my old business partner, I think was recording the vocals in the live room like on a mobile recording setup while I was mixing it. We were Robert Lang, and I think I was mixing, and he was doing the vocals in the other room, if my recollection is correct, which I'm pretty sure it is. So yeah, and I think we were all just really caught off guard by it. And I think that, that it's a kind of a studio cliche that sometimes, you go into the studio and you think that your favorite song just turns out fine, and then this sleeper kind of catches you off guard. It happens a lot in the record making, and that was, that definitely happened with Pachuca. And part of it is just the lyrical content. It's sort of got this wistfulness, and it's a relationship-ish song, and a boy-girl song, and I think the lyrical content has a lot to do with that, making it what it became. But we didn't know that it was going to be subject matter-wise until we finally got to it.
And then even then, after hearing it, was it like, okay, this is completely different, we're still going to stick it deep in the record? Like it wasn't one of those ones where you're going to stick it as 2-3?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I don't remember where it was on the sequence. I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think we liked it, but it was probably so new, and you never know what's really going to resonate. I think we were probably the one area where we were in our head was about the sort of slightly ska-y elements of it. And we didn't have a lot of time to process it between finishing the record and mastering it and making a sequence. And so our probably gut instinct was to
bury it.
Was not to bury it per se, but not to treat it. I don't think we knew yet.
That's so interesting.
We hadn't fully absorbed
because it was done so late. I love that. It didn't have a chance to marinate. We got to throw it in the food. We just don't know how you're going to taste it later.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
So first, when the record was first released, how do you feel like it was received? And then now these last 2 decades, and it's kind of sat in a different place. Have you thought about that? It's just really interesting, like a reception of a record initially, and then what happens later to it, how it has different lives almost.
Yeah, I don't have like many sort of internal emotional connections to how it was received, positively or negatively.
Why?
I don't know. I think by that point, doing what I've been doing, like I had stopped reading reviews of records I'd produced, and so I wasn't going to obsess about what was said. I mean, so honestly, I couldn't tell you if it was a mediocre reception from the Chicago glitterati, writing glitterati, or like Pitchfork, and that kind of crap. Like I just don't remember.
Got it.
And I don't know if I care personally, but that's a function of me just not reading the comments, so to speak. Like, you make enough records, you just kind of go, okay, well, we did our best. And if it didn't resonate, like try not to make the same mistake again, or whatever it may be, as a producer or as a musician. So,
right. So in that same realm, how about now? Like we're still talking about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think, again, I think we believed in the record ourselves, and that was the most important thing. And so, yeah, obviously when we, the arc of, the sort of success arc of the band, was sort of logarithmic. It started out very slow, whether just, we toured the US on Pirates for 5 weeks and played to 2 people in Rochester and 5 people in Chattanooga, and our roadie got more per diem than us. And, by the time we'd gotten to the end of that cycle for Pirates and then beer commercials, we kind of knew we had some momentum, and we also believed in what we were doing, and we were just ready to work and make it happen. Again, like I think obviously it did what we would have dreamed it was doing, or it did what we hoped it would do, but there's no way to know until you do it, until it's out there. And, but again, I think Pachuca probably did throw us for a loop a little bit.
Do you think that song helped helped endure this record?
I mean, it certainly seems that way, but again, I think that's, it's kind of the emotional content. It's like Absinthe Party too. I mean, it's a song about being overseas with the person you care about, and Pachuca is where you're being separated, you're separated from that person. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly the song that has withstood, that one and Hooray are the 2 songs that have kind of stood the test of time. You know what I mean? And made it sort of last as a record. But I mean, ultimately all that stuff comes down to the kids who it scratched an itch for. And typically that's an emotional itch, and I'm just glad it did. I think, but I think we were probably caught. I mean, I'm caught off guard that it's, it is what it has become, I guess.
Really? Why?
I don't know, but I mean, well, again, I mean, I've seen it for 20 years, so I understand that it's a thing now. But I mean, I just, yeah, I don't know. I also the other part of this is, and this, you probably know this is, I only did one tour for that record,
Right?
and so because I didn't see that. I mean, obviously, I wrote it and recorded it and helped make the record, or did my parts in that. I didn't see the sort of groundswell because I wasn't on tour to see it. You know what I mean? So I think I knew they were doing great, and I was super happy for them, and but I didn't see it firsthand, and so for that reason, maybe that amplifies the disconnect that I may have, with how it resonates with the people who are fans. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's also probably a big part of why my perspective on this will be a little different in terms of the relevance to Minus the Bear fans in the discography sense.
Yeah, outside of like that record itself, like what about your relationship with the record? I know we've spoken about it from like mixing and sort of the engineer side, but just personally, like talking about it. It's been 2 decades. I'm sure people mention this record. Like, has your relationship evolved with this record in different ways?
I mean, I look back fondly on my time in Minus the Bear as a tremendous growth experience for me, both as a producer and as a person. And we just shared some. I mean, to me, I sort of get nostalgic about just being young and running around the country and able to do something that I never would have imagined. Because really, that's the one band I've been in, really. And if you had told me when I was 16 that I was going to do that, I would have been like, no, that doesn't sound right. And so I got to experience a huge amount of stuff by virtue of doing this with my friends. I mean, when I first heard the first demos that Dave and Corey and Aaron made, I immediately was like, hey, man, first of all, these were like the people I spent all this time with just socially. I was like, can I try to put some keyboards on this stuff? Can you just like indulge me? And if you like it, maybe I can be a part of this. And, I did some stuff and I surprised myself with how much I liked what I did at the time. And I think they were pleasantly surprised too. And so I got to just do this thing with my friends, and the impact it's had beyond that is phenomenal, but it's kind of, for me, it's secondary to the years I spent running around with my friends, living like my gap years, essentially.
Well, that's I love the way that you said that, because I feel like this record was a really interesting time in that you took a shot, again, leading up to this record, but also like you taking a shot by showing them, hey, I have this idea. What do you guys think? Like, that takes a lot.
I mean, I have a great melodic ear, but I'm not a gifted musician. And I learned keyboards on the fly. Like literally, I barely played keyboards when I started playing. Like I had a little bit of experience, but like it was just an opportunity. I immediately loved what I heard, and I was like, man, this could be really cool, even if it never gets out of Seattle. It's just going to be fun from a creative standpoint. And I'm really grateful that I got the chance to do it for as long as I did. And I think I left when my time was right, and it was right for them as well. For a number of different reasons. So, I mean, like, it's just one of those things where I'm always going to be proud of that involvement. And if I go, when I see them play shows or, over the years since I left, there's definitely songs that still get me kind of like, get me in the heart a little bit, that I just remember really loving it's songs that I helped write the parts with and do all that stuff, there's a few that I'm just like, man, I love what Jake's singing. I love the music. I love what we all did. And this is the reason why this was so important to me, was these specific songs, especially, that I'm like, man, I wouldn't trade being a part of that piece of music for anything.
I love that. So I would love you at this point. We need you to describe each of the other core members in one word. So I'm going to name the other person and then you're going to say what you describe them in one word. And then you're going to tell me what you think they would say.
About themselves or about me?
About you. Like one word, but these are both going to be one word. If it turns into a phrase, I'm not going to give you points off.
No, I'll do my best.
Okay, ready? We're going to start. If you need some time.
This is where I'm going to either risk being totally too diplomatic or totally not.
This is the most listened to part of these podcasts when I do these, so I'm joking. All right, we're going to do Jake Snyder.
I think this is one word, but
you can do a phrase. I'll let it pass.
Oh God. Oh man. Gosh, I've got so many different Jake interactions from recording him to being, like prior to Minus the Bear and then being on tour with him. It's brutal. Chill.
Okay.
There's a bunch of connotations I could lay into that with, but he's oftentimes unflappable in a way that I find annoying and envy.
I love that. See, that's perfect. The word and then a little phrase. What would he say for you?
Oh, and they're all going to say I'm intense.
Intense. Okay.
That's my guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I would say they're all probably going to, passionate or intense being the negative, passionate, opinionated, any of those things.
Okay. So those three. All right. So we'll do
I'm pretty sure it'll all fall into that category. At least that's the way I imagine perceiving or discussing me.
All right. One word for David.
Perfectionist.
Okay. And then what word is he going to use? He's going to use one of those three for you?
He might cut me a little more slack than the other guys. But again, 20 years maybe is soften that perspective. But
you can use intense again.
I think, yeah, Dave and I are like the closest. Certainly for a number of years, we're the closest. He was my closest friend in the band, and prior to the band, like he and I were constantly together during the botch years, and so that's. I don't actually know what he might say.
All right, we'll leave it open.
I really don't.
All right, let's do Corey. What's one word for Corey?
Corey is sensitive, and I mean that in like a good way, like emotionally aware. And then times it flares up and it's hard to manage sometimes, but he cares and he's, sensitive and respectful, or, that's the way I'm sort of characterizing that word.
Love it. And then what word would he use for you?
Aggro.
Aggro. I like that.
Yeah. He and I were the ones who butted heads a lot. We're sort of two sides of the same coin.
How so?
We're both sensitive, but we have different reactions to when we feel aggrieved.
Oh, interesting. And that would be during this recording?
At different points in our time in Minus the Bear, for sure. It wasn't something that was part of our social life prior to to being in the band together, because I knew him before that. But we were at loggerheads at different points in time, not always creatively, just about how we behaved in certain situations, or how we're there's a million ways I could explain this without getting all into the weeds of our dynamic. But
understood.
I have a ton of respect for him, and I've learned to appreciate him more than I did back then.
Yep.
And I think I would imagine that he'd probably say something similar now that time has passed.
Right. How about Alex Rose?
I don't know. So much of answering those questions for everybody is just my own neuroses about me being a hard ass for all these years and sort of wishing I wasn't. So I don't know. I think Alex probably has a less whatever his take on will probably be a little less negatively connotated, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I don't know. I honestly don't. I saw Alex in London a couple months ago, and we had a great hang, and there's a lot of mutual respect there. And but I couldn't tell you.
I love it.
I don't know how to separate myself from that question. I really don't.
Okay.
That's a hard one.
It's hard. I guess, I just love, as you've talked about this for the last, 45 minutes or so, like anything else that's kind of floated in your mind that's come up that you didn't think would come up, or that you haven't sort of, brought up since then?
I mean, some of the sort of, I've not offhand. I think just, no, I'm really just proud of, my involvement and, wouldn't have. So, we really put ourselves in a position to make something that we believed in, and I'm just glad it was received the way it was. You know what I mean? It's, you don't really, lots of people make stuff they believe in and it doesn't really get to connect. And so, it's funny, like going back to that time, the problem with my life is that all I do is make records. And if I hadn't made a record as a musician since Menos el Oso, I'd probably remember every detail. But I don't.
That's all right.
Because I've made God knows how many records since then. And so it's, so I just don't have a strong, I don't have a series of strong recollections aside from some of the stuff I've already talked about.
Yeah, no, I have a very embarrassing interview that I did where someone made a bunch of records and I accidentally started asking about my favorite records and they had no idea. And I was like, oh man, I just couldn't fathom. I was like, what do you,
right.
And now that you say that, I feel further embarrassed that I did that. But it's also I get that. It was this moment in time. I think the way that you talked about it, where it happened, when it happened, and where these things were, it just was a beautiful moment that, yes, ended up getting remembered. And sometimes those don't. But when you said to me earlier that if it didn't get out of Seattle, that was okay, I love that because you were making it to make it. Not necessarily for fame, but just, no, we make it. We're making this. This is what we love right now.
Yeah, and we believed in it, and we thought it would resonate. But honestly, without Suicide Squeeze, I don't know that we have the ability to pull any of it off. And so, specifically, they really not saved, but they gave us an opportunity that really enabled us to sort of get out there and really try. That goes back to Gigantic. This is not related also, but the one of the things I always talk about David Dickinson about, or praising David Dickinson and our thing is we recorded that EP before we ever played a show.
Wow.
And our first show, I don't know why or if David did this on purpose, but David, we had managed to get David to agree to put it out, and we actually had CDs at our first show.
Wow.
Which is absurd.
Back then is mine. That's what do you mean?
Well, that's the thing that. We had a Members Of thing in Seattle, and our fourth show was with Built to Spill, and our sixth show was New Year's with the Shins when they were on their first record. We had some tremendous opportunities by virtue of knowing all the promoters and all that. But without that record being able to be bought and latched onto by people that, again, even if it was a slow burn, just that to me set us up for local success, which helped us believe that we should go try and get out of town. And, David really is due a tremendous, I've got tremendous gratitude for David and what he did for us, throughout the time I was in the band, and he's, continued. They obviously went to Dangerbird and stuff, but just David's been great to us. And, but he's just really helped us.
Absolutely.
Accomplish something that we might not have been able to on a different label.
Yep. Well, it's fine. I talk about that when I worked at hardcore labels, trying to put out stuff that wasn't hardcore. And It was man, that thing could have been X if it was on this label. I always talk about that band called Snake Across the Crown. I was if this fucking thing was on Sub Pop or anything else or Merge, they would be this decade's Wilco. And poof. Yeah. Last question.
Okay. I'll do my best.
If you could send a message back in time to yourself in that 2005, specifically about this record, what kind of advice or insight would you offer yourself?
I
know it's a hard question, but I feel like
I don't have a lot of second guessing going on about.
I love that.
I'm not very good at letting go of things, but when I think back to this record, I don't really think that there was any tremendous missteps or drama. It's going back to briefly about this conversation about why I can't remember various components of different records. Unless something goes jaw-droppingly amazing, a lot of times the only thing you remember from records is the tense moments that happen every record that gets made ever, there's always moments of sort of,
Right.
you know, and like sometimes you just remember the tough parts because everything else, you know, wasn't hard.
What about
so in the context of
encouragement?
Oso, we just didn't have a lot of, like, we made a record and there wasn't a lot of bullshit associated with it. And I think it just kind of happened really smoothly from what I recall. I'm sure there were some debates and hemming and hawing about stuff, but there wasn't anything that I think back of as being like a serious impediment to making a good record.
Right.
Everybody pulled their weight. Jake stepped up. You know, Jake was always slow with vocals. Like, you know, there were times where we, again, Pachuca being a prime example, where we'd only have half the songs demo before we started recording, and we just had to cross our fingers, and he'd do stuff, and I'd be like, okay, well, maybe try this, and maybe try this, and you know, we'd kind of hone in on it. But no, I mean, I'm.
What about encouragement? Well, could you give yourself encouragement, like from
yeah? Well,
then?
I mean, yeah, your parts don't suck. Turn them up a little bit more, sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but yeah, it's. I spent, you know, 30 years making records, and if I kind of just have to do my best and give it away, and then move on to the next one and improve and give that record away, whether it's as a producer or as a musician. So, you know, I don't, you know, again, if I were to remix it, could I make it sound a little better? Hell yeah, I could, but I don't hate what I did. It's just 20 years of experience means I'd do it a little better. But,
yep, absolutely.
but no, I try my best to live in the moment I'm in and not obsess about.
Right. Well, I think the answer was don't worry about what you played and turn it up. That's the answer.
Yeah. I think that is. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a rambler.
No, you're not. Welcome to the podcast. That's what this is for. Really appreciate your time today.
No, well, thanks for including me. You know, I'm glad the guys included me. I talked to Dave a little bit the other day, and I appreciate being involved.